late models and Mustangs, how were they equipped engine-wise?
Well, the first year that we raced, we had a little, it was a 140 cubic inch engine, which was the standard Chevrolet wagon engine, which was an aluminum block and a steel head. And the head, I guarantee you, weighed 3 times as much as what the block did. But we were racing against the Ford Picots, and it was, I think, a 2000 cc, and those things were just bad. And the aftermarket parts availability was so much better than what we were able to come up with, so we had to get a little bit more creative. So that second year, we went with what is called a Pontiac Iron Duke, which was a 151 cubic inch. And if you look at the numbers on that, that's exactly half of 302. And the bore and the stroke was the same as the 302 Chevrolet engine.
And you run their pistons and rods.
Absolutely. So we knew we had to pick our program up that the second year that we came back. So
That was a good combination.
It was. That R&D was a mighty fine motor.
It was. Yeah.
And you can use other stuff with it.
Correct.
When you first started that was started to be an economical class, or was it for beginners and all that? That was that was an entry level class.
Absolutely.
And it went well then, because you picked up that many cars in 1 year.
That year, that's correct. And I think, I don't know if people looked at me, because at that time I wore glasses, and I probably didn't weigh 100 pounds, and I think people were looking at me like, well, if that little kid can do it, I can do it. So I think that kind of helped, get a lot of people interested and kind of get things going.
Well, how long? I know we raced it. It started out with an economical class, and they run maybe 1 year, and then it add on to it. And about 2 years there, it wasn't economical.
Not at all, because then you had aluminum wheels coming into play, you had racing tires coming into play. Those guys just kept spinning on motors on those things. I mean, it was unbelievable where it got to a certain point on the amount of money that was being spent on four-cylinder engines.
It's cheaper to run a V8 then.
At that point, you're right. You're exactly right.
We're our own biggest enemy of racing. When we get it where it handled, we want more power.
Yeah.
We get more power, we gotta work on our handling. We're never satisfied. So we keep on till we price ourselves out of business if somebody don't pull the reins out.
That's right. I remember Skip Barb having a slogan on the back of his spoilers that never enough.
Bobby, do you ever have to give him any advice about slowing down a little bit, backing up a little bit?
No, he told me one time, back when we was wearing headsets and had radios up in Cleveland, I come on the radio and told him something about, you need to pick it up, you need to do this, you need to do that. He come in the pit and I come down there. He got out of the car and I was getting on him pretty good. And he said, if you could drive the thing any better, and you might have to bleep this out. He said, you drive the damn thing. So
I understand the feeling.
So after that, they took my speaker away from me. All I had was a headset. I couldn't talk to him anymore.
That makes for a good observation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess, Bobby, where are you, or Robbie, where are you at in your racing career right now?
Currently, we're running the limited late model class at primarily I-75. We do a 4.0 early this year for a big race. We haven't made it over Crossville, but we mainly have been focusing on I-75. We've had a pretty good year so far. We've only ran a handful of races, but I think we've ran 7 races. We've had a second, a couple thirds, and a couple 2, 3, 4s. So our worst finish of the year has been 4th.
Well, that's good. That's real good.
We've been there. We just haven't been able to pull that win off. We got the driver. I could get on to him here a little bit here a few weeks ago. We led 22 out of 25 laps and had a caution come out with just a few to go. And I was pretty content with where I was running at and didn't think I needed to go hunt for any more traction. And somebody showed me that there was more traction out there, and I got past with 3 to go. So we ended up second that night.
That's still good.
I've won them that way. And
Hey, when you can finish all the races, you're doing well.
On the class you're running now, what you're running like? What limited on the motor, it was a steel head.
They're still head motors, correct?
Okay, but you could, what about the bowling strokes, whatever you wanna run?
You know, this particular motor, I couldn't even tell you. You know, we've had so many different combinations here in the last year that, quite honestly, I don't even know where we're at right now. Our owner, Richard Harvey, he builds our stuff. You know, he'll just run this one, run this one. So, you know, so I don't have any specifics on this particular motor that we're running right now here.
That's good, really.
Well, where you're running now, then, but these are not crate motors, then, these are, I guess they've got certain limits of what you can do with them.
Right.
Have y'all got any tire rules or?
Yes, you're either like an American racer or cruiser, and we have compound rules on the type frame that we run.
Well, do you have a good field of race cars?
We've been having quality cars at I-75 every week.
That's good, because we know, there's lots of tracks out there struggling right now. And it seems like too, we go through a phase where there will not be any tracks that want to start doing good, then we have some more that builds up. And we get too many maybe, and we go through phases with them. So, and I know some are struggling right now.
And then they'll try to be fairly close together, run on the same night, then they kill each other.
Stepping on each other's toes, making
Yeah.
things tough.
What do you think is their secret to being successful?
Well, some people say, well, it's the only game in town, but, you know, but you have to go over and look at Mountain View, you know, they have a good car count every weekend. You know, I like the racing in I-75. I like the speed. It's a decent sized racetrack. It really carries the speed. You kind of move your lanes around a little bit, find a little bit of traction. I enjoy that part.
What length track is it?
They're considering 3/8.
That is good.
So there's some speed up there, that's for sure.
There's some high bank.
Yes, sir. Thank you, yes, sir, absolutely.
Well, where do you intend to take your racing career? Where do you want to get to with it? Or are you?
I have more laps behind me than I do in front of me. And in my younger days, my desire was to go on and try to get to, you know, do some asphalt racing. And matter of fact, in the early 90s, I went down and went through the Buckmaker driving school about 6 months after Jeff Ford quit. The Ford Motor Company paid for Jeff to go through, and I paid for me to go through. So, but Buddy Baker was my personal driving instructor that weekend.
Well, you got a good instructor.
I sure did, and really enjoyed that experience. And then came back home the next weekend and got back in the dirt car and really dominated it pretty much. So I don't know how much of me going through that school added to that, but you know, it was just like it was easy. You know?
Well, it's obvious you have and are having a successful career. There's usually something, a race somewhere that stands out. You remember, what would that be if you had to share with us the race that probably stands out most to you?
I had a race in 2014. I hadn't raced in 2 years. The previous deal that I was in with a good friend of mine, Jerry Stanfield, he had got to a point where he had retired from his job, and he had told me going in, he said, our days racing are numbered. So unfortunately his father had passed away, so there's a lot that went on out there, and he retired from racing. So that pretty much stopped my racing there for a little while. And then Richard and Robert Harvey, they had sold Ford Speedway, and they had a couple of cars that Jerry Kaufman was driving. And they had called me in March to come out and drive one of the cars, and we went out, had a good night, ran like fourth, and so that kind of ended that. And then in 2013, Dad's wife at the time had a motorcycle accident and succumbed to her injuries. And it was kind of a tough time on Dad, you know, coming up on that 1 year anniversary. And I just wanted to do something to kind of help him through that time. So I called Richard and Robert and said, hey, you know, did you care if I drove that car again? And they said, yeah, come get it. So I went and picked it up on Tuesday night, kind of went through it and kind of put what I thought it needed as far as shocks and springs are concerned. And went out there on Friday night and had like 26 or 27 cars out there for just a regular show. And we're gonna have a work cut out for us tonight. And, we were running heat races at the time too. We came up and won our heat race. And, another good friend of mine, Paul Timms, won his heat race. So that put us both in the front row. And I'd raced enough with Paul at Cleveland, and I knew that I better have my program together when the green flag dropped, because he was tough, really. So we fired off, and I got a little trigger happy, and I stood up in the throttle, and I buzzed the rear tires, and he got out on it. You know, so fortunately, caution come out. So we had a restart. So I thought, okay, big boy, don't mess this one up. So we fired back off, and me and Paul left, and got the lead on him, and we went on. I don't know that I have ever been as focused in a race as what I was that particular night. I wasn't even looking up at the scoreboard, and the lap traffic that night was just with so many cars on such a small racetrack. They were just everywhere, and I was just having to pick and choose. And you know, unfortunately, my car was good enough. I could step up to the outside, or I could pass them on the inside, and we went on and we won that race. And you know, that particular race, for that reason, will always carry a special place in my heart. Even though it wasn't a big race, it wasn't a big trophy or anything involved, it was just the fact
was the
of
situation.
what we were doing, the reason why we were doing it. So that race in particular always stands out.
Well, this is,
Let me butt in there for just a minute.
you come right in.
1 year to the day, I'll get a little emotional. It's when I lost my wife. Robby dedicated that race to me in front of all them people. And that's something I'll never ever forget. He took that right rear tire off, and we was on American Racers, and nobody back then was running American Racers, they was running Hoosiers. And he cut out a disc and put in it, and give that to me on Father's Day. I'm sorry for getting emotional.
Hey, that's what we're supposed to do.
Not everybody's got a son like that.
If that's father-son relationship right like that is priceless. I'll tell both of you are. And when one of you lose the other, it's going to become even more priceless than the one left. And,
I look at it this way, every day I have with you is another day. I just count my blessings. Especially, you know, we've had so many experiences just running up down the racetrack and stuff together. That's kind of our common bond, and I just cherish every moment that we have together.
well, believe me, Gary Lawrence and myself, both, we know what a good relationship with a father means and the memories you have with that. And it's priceless. I mean, there's nothing to compare it with. There's no price you can put on it. There's nothing more important than that. And I thank you too. That's what this podcast is a lot about, sharing those personal stories. Because it's easy to sit in the grandstand and see that guy in a car under a helmet, and he's real and all that. But this is what makes racing really real, is stories like this that people can relate to, and that puts the human factor to the race car, and that's what makes racers are a little bit different breed, I guess, sometimes. But we have a lot of emotion. If we didn't have a lot of emotion, I guess we wouldn't do what we do. And with that being said, and this is going to be a question too for both of them, as we've talked, there's successful tracks out there, but there's tracks out struggling. And I know still being active, coming from where you have and where you are now, and having worked with each other, what are some of the things that you see that makes tracks go, or maybe what they need to look at to make it easier for people to get into racing? What would you like to see happen to improve racing or make it more affordable or more access to more people?
One of the things that kind of comes to my mind is have to, we're in the entertainment business.
We
So
are.
We have to keep these folks engaged. And one of the things that I would like to see, I would like to see more racing. When I was coming up through the lower divisions, we always ran heat races. When I was enforcer, we weren't qualifying. So I think that's what helps you hone your race skills is by racing. And I know you don't want to have, me as a spectator, I don't want to sit in the stands and watch 2 hours of qualifying. I want to see some side-by-side racing. And I think we need to bring that back in the lower divisions, especially. Because I knew it was a big deal for me when I had to start qualifying. Because it was that tough, because you're out there by yourself, everybody's watching you, they know when you're on the gas, when you're not. But I think from the entertainment value, we need to bring more racing back, and I think races is part of it.
We asked most of our guests that same question, and that's a pretty synonymous answer is you can't drag races out doing nothing. People will get bored, and all you got to do is for them to get bored, and they say, well, and then they don't want to come back. So keeping them, and you're right, we are in the entertainment business, and there's nothing worse than just sitting there watching one car run around there, and it's not even that good to the guy that's out there.
If there are 5 cars running tight and one, don't matter how fast they're going.
That's right.
It's
Putting the show on.
They're putting the show on.
That's it.
And as long as they're competitive, right close to each other, they're putting the show on. And everybody's taking a day with it. But the speed don't matter. But everybody thinks, I gotta get faster next week, I gotta get faster, but that ain't works.
I
That
think
ain't always.
that's one of the things that's making the Crown Vic class become more and more popular. It's affordable to a big extent, and there are lots of guys out there. And anytime you put more money into something, it starts getting more serious, and it becomes sometimes less fun.
There's already aftermarket parts being produced for Crown Vics now, so.
We'll mess that up too.
That's right. We're on worst end.
They'll have $10,000 of shocks on them, won't they?
Anyway, it's been good having you two here today and sharing your stories with you. Appreciate you sharing that personal story with me. Now, there's got to be something that I haven't asked you yet that you'd like to tell me about. There's got to be something else. One of the two of you would just like to.
I've got a couple of things I've
Okay.
been thinking about. And since we're coming in the Middle Tennessee area, I just want to kind of share a couple of my experiences at Crossers Speedway. And the first time I did it.
And that is a good
I
racetrack.
love that racetrack. I absolutely love it. But the first time we came over was in '87. We were in our Camaro at the time. And it was just me and Dad. And we pulled in, we were getting everything unloaded. And had this guy walk up to me and he said, hey, aren't you Robby Mason? I said, yeah. I sure am. He said, well, we've heard about you. And I thought, and that person that came up to me was none other than Randy Williams. So at that point, I'm thinking, well, we got a bullseye on our back right now, and if we had known better, we probably just should have loaded up and went back to the house at that point. Because we did have a very good night. After about 2 flat tires in the feature or whatever, I was ready to go back to the house. But the only good thing that come out of that night was just the friendship that I developed with Randy. Now, the second time that I went up was a year later, and we were in the limited class. And I talked to some people about going over there. I said, well, you're going to have to contend with the Lunas and the Williams. I said, okay, all right. So we loaded up, we headed over. And at that time,
Now, which Luna was this?
well, I had 2 that I had to contend with. One was Mike Luna and one was BK Luna.
Okay, well, you did have your hands full.
We had Rick and Sam Williams that we had to race with too. But we came over and we had our little 8-inch spoilers, our little 9-to-1 motor, our little hard spec tires. And I look up and there's this red and white 2 car that goes through the pit area with these big wings. And one of the guys that went with me said, did you hear that 2 car? It sounded just like a top fuel dragster going through there. He looked at me like, good luck. So you're going to need it. So, and that was none other than Mike Queen. So we ran, I think we did like 3rd in our heat race. And we fired off and raced with the Loons, with the Williams, and got around them, and Mike was leading, Mike was gone. And then BK was second, and I got up to BK and got to racing with him, and actually snuck around him and passed him. And then
You had a good nap.
I better get going. And then looked up, buddy, here he come. I poked a sleeping giant, I think, and he drove back around. But after the race is over, Mike won, BK second, and myself was third. And I went down and talked to BK, and just wanted to tell him how much I appreciated racing with him. And he looked at me and he said, "You driving that car?" Because at this time, again, I'm wearing glasses and I'm not even 120 pounds or whatever, and I don't look like your typical race car driver by no means. And his mouth was just open. He said, "You were driving that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." And that's about all he had to say. Is I just said, "Well, I just wanted to tell you, I appreciate the racing with you," or whatever. And then the next week, the announcer came down, Mr. Gooch, and he wanted to make sure that was me driving that race car. And he actually stood there as I got out of the car after hot lapping to make sure I was driving that car.
That'd be a compliment all within itself. Well, guys, thank both of you, Bobby and Robbie, both for being here and entertaining us, sharing your stories with us. And I think there's some more story out there that we'll get back together and do. I definitely want to come visit your shop and see what you're doing, how you do it, and so. And with that, thank you for watching. And remember again, if you've got an anniversary, a wedding, a birthday party, any gathering that you want to make a memorable event, remember the Northfield Vineyard, folks. You'd be really surprised what you can do with very little and how memorable an event they can make your event. With that, thank you for watching.